Good morning. It feels like a little while since we've had a regular Zoom, doesn't it? Oh, did we lose Melanie? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start off with some announcements this morning. Remember, I'm not talking to you guys specifically. I'm putting it out there. And I am going to say this, Miss Elise, this does not pertain to you and this weekend. She's so sweet. Whenever she texts me on the weekend, she's like, I am so sorry. I know it's the weekend, but I am reminding some students that I need my weekends off, guys. I probably had 50 text messages just on Sunday. So what I'm going to be ask you to begin to do is on Friday or even on Thursday evening, whenever, go ahead and start looking over what you have coming up for the that you're going to be completing on the weekend, and get with me on your questions before 5 o'clock on Friday. So that way I can have some time off on the weekends, especially now that the weather is pretty and I'm going to want to be out and about. I was helping my son move on Sunday, and that was very difficult trying to answer questions and do different things. And that's going to lead me into the end of modules. When you have an ending to modules and you have not done your assignments for a couple of weeks, I cannot leave that module open for you guys to get caught up with that many assignments. So if you're leaving your assignments for the last minute, I'm going to ask that you reorganize, look at some time management, and make sure that you don't have a lot of unsubmitted assignments come the end of the module. So our module ends on November 19th for module 151. That was the confusion too, that 158 didn't lead into 159. So 151 is actually our leading module. She's the first one in line, and then 152, 153. And I don't even want to talk about those because most of you began in 153. So that means that you guys are getting there, right?
Yeah.
So our module ends on the 19th, which is a Friday. And I will leave the module open till the 21st, which is that Sunday, until midnight. And all assignments must be submitted at that time. So also, I want to remind you that sometimes I'm asking you for examples. Say that I'm saying, okay, do your workbook vocabulary review group A 1 through 10, group B 1 through 10, group C 1 through 15, but I'm only asking you to submit what? Group A or whatever I'm asking you. You need to complete those assignments because then you can pass your exam and it's part of your curriculum. I'm only asking you to submit to me that little bit to make sure you're on the right track and look at the caliber of your work. So I think that most of you understand that, but we do have some newer students who came in on our back end. And I just want to reiterate because they came in Sims charting, and that was a weird place to start, right? Excuse me. So again, I may ask you for I may assign a lengthy assignment, but I'm only asking you to submit a portion of it. So, okay. So the next thing is we have a newsletter, a new newsletter, and I'm going to share my screen and pull that up real quick so I can show you about that. Okay, so this is our new newsletter for this month. I know I put a 1029, but it's close enough. So our student of the week for last week was Melanie. Congratulations, Melanie. We're really proud of you. And you're a wonderful student, and it's just a joy to have you in class. I want to point out that it talks about your module beginning and ending. And that gives you information on your Thanksgiving break. We're off the 25th, and we return on the 29th. That is the Thursday. We're off Thursday, Friday, and of course your weekend, Saturday and Sunday, and we'll return to school that Monday. Continue on in our newsletter. I just put a COVID-19 article up, and it was fairly long, y'all, sorry. And then I put a recipe for my family's favorite dish or side dish for Thanksgiving, which is green bean casserole. I figured everybody knows how to make green bean casserole, but I put it on there anyway. So you can find that on your Genza bar in the gray tab under newsletter. So congratulations, Melanie.
Yay.
So she was last week. I'll be doing a student of the week for this week. I just haven't done it yet. So when we get back together, probably next Tuesday, I'll have added it to the newsletter. I'm sorry, y'all. I thought I turned my volume off, but apparently I did not. So I'm going to stick this where I can't hear it anymore. That was the eye doctor. So anyway, okay. So that is all of our announcements. Does anybody have anything they want to add or any questions about any of that? Okay, so we're going to go right into chapter 2, therapeutic communication. It's my favorite chapter. I love it because I'm a communicator. You guys all know this, right? Communication is key. Communicate, communicate. Because I just feel like I was raised by a very Southern family. And my mom used to literally say, little girls are to be seen, not heard. Does that sound familiar to anybody else? Little girls are to be seen, not heard. So here I am, 50 years old, and sometimes that's still in the back of my mind that I don't want to speak up. You know, I speak up with you guys because what? Comfort level. I'm good with doing this. But when I was in my coding position, I had to learn to speak to professionals, CEOs, doctors, nurses, and it really, really threw me because in the back of my head, I'm going, I'm not his equal in profession. Well, you can't ever think that because then you're automatically going in at a disadvantage, right? So communication is so important, but not just in that portion of things, but communication is important because of our patients. So no matter what you do in a medical facility, whether it be front office, insurance authorization, whatever you do, billing and coding, you're always going to have to talk to patients. Even as a coder, you're going to have to talk to patients, not as much as a front office person. So knowing how to communicate therapeutically in whatever situation is important. I may have told the story before. I probably have. When I called a patient about her overdue balance, and she was in the last stages of cancer, and she was literally passing away. And she was distraught because I called to ask her. I had no idea, right? I didn't know, it wasn't in her notes anywhere. And so she was very upset. So I could have reacted in anger because that's how she came at me. She wasn't angry at me. She was angry about her situation. So we always have to, you have to be able to stop to think that when a patient is reacting to you, they're either hurt, they're scared, they've had a bad diagnosis. And there could be reasons. It could be just that they're temperamental, but you have to be able to communicate through that. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get into our slideshow. So therapeutic communication, and this YouTube link has nothing to do with anything. I just couldn't get it off of there. And I thought our little guy was cute. So, okay. Let's talk about first impressions. Why are they so important? Now, we've talked about this quite a bit. So if we talk about something at length, that means it's very important. So let's read what our little quote says. It says, it only takes 1/10 of a second for people to form judgments on your attractiveness, competence, trustworthiness, and liability upon first meeting you. So they're going to be judging you on all of these things, whether we like it or not, they do. Your physical dress and appearance, your positive attitude, your ability to show compassion, the smile on your face, and whether you communicate effectively. Okay, so let's talk about those things a little bit. So are we all Miss Louisiana's or Miss America? Do you really think that that's what that means? No, it's not. You have to be clean, put together. Whatever you're wearing needs to be pressed. Your hair needs to be done. That is what we're talking about. If a patient walks up to you and you're disheveled, well, imagine yourself if you're a patient and you walk up to the front office and the person who's checking you in or the person who's taking your money on the backside are disheveled and their hair is a mess and they don't smell nice and they're, you know what I mean? That's what we're talking about, personal appearance. It needs to be professional appearance. You need to look good. Now, I'm going to tell you, it doesn't matter what everybody in your office, Adelie's so cute. It doesn't matter what anybody else looks like in your office. You need to hold yourself to a different standard, right? Because imagine you start off at the front office and Betty Sue is doing the billing and she's getting ready to retire. And then there's another girl at the taking payments at the end or doing insurance verifications, but she looks disheveled all the time. She's not organized. She's not put together. And then that position comes open that you want. That position comes open that you want. Do you think that your boss or your office manager is going to be taking a look at who's more put together? It's all going to come into play, right? Kelly, she's put together. She's enthusiastic. She's correctable. She's wonderful with the patients. She's able to be cross-trained. She's willing to help. Those are the things they're looking for. They're not looking for beauty queens. They're not looking for Jimmy Choo's and Michael Kors and big diamond earrings. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about being put together, being clean cut, being organized, and that you present well. So I wanted to make sure that you guys understood that you don't have to be a beauty queen. You just need to look good. You just need to look nice. And Miss Kelly said, thank God. I know I agree totally with you. Thank goodness. Okay, so we're going to get back to our slideshow. So a smile is always a wonderful thing to be greeted with. You guys know my attitude on smiling while you answer the phone because it sounds like you're smiling. That smile comes through. So let's talk about some diversity in communication. So what are some types of diversity? We can talk about nationality, race, culture, ethnicity. I can never say that word right, excuse me, and social factors. So there's some individual diversity factors when you're communicating. There could be a language barrier, age, religion, economic status, gender, and again, appearance. So let's talk about what is involved in body language. So let's talk about nonverbal communication. So 80% of communication is nonverbal. What comes into play with that is body language, gestures, mannerisms, appearance, self-esteem and confidence, and facial expressions. So obviously, this is a silly little slide that shows some facial expressions, but not just the expression you have on your face. You can actually judge who you're dealing with by their facial expression and by their nonverbal communication. What does this say?
Irritated.
You gonna tell me something? What you gonna tell me? Bored, right? Chewing your gum. I almost came on here with gum chewing, but I said, no, I'm not going to do that. So it's not just the nonverbal communication you're giving, it's what's being given to you too. So if you guys know that finger. So we always have to be careful of our gestures. Some of my children like to point. I don't like this gesture because to me that says, I'm telling you what to do and you don't know anything, right? So some people are pointers. So we have to just be really aware, start practicing that now and making yourself aware of what you're doing when you talk. I talk with my hands. I think that this is more interactive. This makes you part of my conversation instead of the conversation being one-sided, right? So you don't need to be, you know what I mean? But we're not, doing a dance, but what we're doing is it just seems more friendly. This is when you do something, this seems more, hello, welcome to my space, rather than what you want. So I know those are silly things, but they mean a great deal. Do you guys agree that this means a great deal? Think about how people communicate with you. Think about when your children are communicating with you and they're mad and they're versus how you communicate with them when you're, sweetheart, listen, let's calm down. So those are really important when you're dealing with patients. All right, we'll get back to our slideshow. So let's talk about some cultural differences. Now, you wouldn't think that this would make such a big deal, but listen, we have all nationalities here, and we're going to be dealing with lots of different things. Language barriers, cultural differences, religious differences. If you're interacting with a person from another culture group that you are unfamiliar with, you need to follow the other person's lead. You need to use your gestures cautiously, and you need to refrain from touching a child's head. Remember that facial expressions can be misinterpreted, and the lack of eye contact may be related to nervousness. Okay, so I am going to come back and talk to you about eye contact. One of the things I want to caution you of is making extreme eye contact. Eye contact for us is important, right? But for some nationalities, it is not. Eye contact can be thought of as aggressive or demanding, or even passing on evil spirits. I know that sounds crazy, but that's not what we're used to. But that's the diversity that we're living in, right? We're also living in a diversity where pronouns are important. So we need to be cautious when using pronouns. All right. Now, what does that mean? That just means if someone corrects you and says, could you call me she instead of he, then, you can respect that. But if you don't know, then you simply don't know. We haven't had a lot of that here, but who knows, y'all might wind up in New York or something where that is more of a question. Atlanta, Georgia, Miss Elise, that is more prevalent there. Louisiana is a bit small and, a little bit sheltered as far as that is concerned, but there are more and more of those situations. Does it matter what you think about that personally? It's not up to you to decide. You just need to make sure that you're taking care of your patient in whatever aspect that is your scope of practice, which means that's whatever you're doing. Okay, let's talk about spatial distance. Now, I don't know if you guys, sometimes I say, this is my bubble and I put my arms out, and this is your bubble. You put your arms out. So it's important to realize that as healthcare professionals, we move into the personal or intimate space of patients many times while we provide care. Now, is that necessarily going to be you? Not necessarily, but you may have an opportunity to be a little closer to a patient sometimes. So let's think about this. Intimate or personal space is 0 to 18 inches. Casual personal space is 18 inches to 4 feet. Social business space is 4 to 12 feet. And public space is 12 feet and greater. Right now, everything needs to be 6 feet, right? So COVID helped us out a little bit in that area. But again, we need to be very close. We need to be very cautious, especially if we're dealing with a different ethnic background, how close we're getting. Okay. And you're going to be able to judge that. It's not anything to stress over. Just take those cues from your patient. If they're standing way back, don't get closer. Remember that they may have specific beliefs on being able to be close to another person. Us Southerners, we're giving everybody a hug, huh? Okay, so the next thing that we're going to talk about is our communication cycle. So the first part of the cycle is the message. That's where you speak or write clearly, use correct terminology, use appropriate verbal tone, vocal tone and volume, consider your audience, engage the reader or the person listening. And then, of course, if you're writing an email, you need to proofread your message. Then you have the receiver, which that's the interpretation of what was sent. The feedback is the signs and symbols are, it can be facial expressions, it could be hand gestures, it can be written, and it can be spoken. And the sender well, I got that wrong, y'all. The sender goes first. The sender gives the message goes to the receiver, and the receiver interprets it and then gives feedback. I don't know how I just missed sender completely, but you're gonna, like, I'm the sender. What I'm saying is the message. You guys are the receiver. You interpret what I say, and then you give feedback. Does that make sense? Yes, it does. No, it doesn't.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so part of therapeutic communication is active listening. This is the most important therapeutic technique. You need to fully concentrate on what's being said and how it's being said. And you need to show interest verbally and non-verbally. We're going to talk about open and closed questions and statements. An open statement or question asks for general information, encourages patients to respond in a manner in which they find comfortable. Closed is when you ask for specific information and limits the patient's answer to 1 or 2 words. Can you guys think of an example of an open question or statement?
Open question would be, how is your day today?
Yeah, that could be. All right, what can be an example of a closed question? What's your date of birth? When was the last time you saw the doctor? You know, you're asking for a very specific piece of information. That's usually when you're trying to fill in the charts or fill in the gaps. Has your insurance changed in the last 3 months? So those open statements are generally, how have you been feeling lately? That gives them an opportunity to really kind of give you details. So you're going to be using a combination of those things with patients. So here are some techniques for therapeutic communication: reflection, restatement or paraphrasing, neutral, silence, clarification, and summarization. So we're just going to go through these really quickly. Reflection is putting words to the person's emotional reaction, which acknowledges the person's feelings. Things like, I understand you're having trouble with, or you feel that. Your restatement, you're restating and you're paraphrasing what they've told you. Do not repeat the person's exact words. Use phrases such as, what I am hearing is, or it sounds like you're saying. Refrain from using, I know what you mean, or I know how that feels. We don't like that, do we? Neutral encourages the speaker to continue and conveys you're interested in listening to the message. Use phrases such as, I see. Oh, that's very interesting. Or you can be silent. It allows time to gather thoughts and answer questions. And it can be uncomfortable to some people. It allows time to think about what was said. So let's think about this. How often do we ask a question or say something and the person that we say it to is silent? And then we're like, oh no. Well, a lot of times I don't spend a lot of time thinking about what's going to come out of my mouth before I say it. How many of us suffer from that?
Oh, yeah.
We don't want to do that with patients, right? patients, doctors, coworkers. So it's okay to take a moment. You could even say, give me just a minute to process that, so that you can think of what you need to say. If someone says something to you and you don't really know, should you just answer and say whatever? No, you say, I don't know the answer to that question, but I'm going to think about it, or I'm going to do some research, and I'm going to get back with you on an answer. I want you guys to understand that that is absolutely acceptable communication. Absolutely acceptable. But don't be uncomfortable if you ask someone something and they take a moment to think and gather their thoughts. I really want to do more thinking and gathering my thoughts before I react. I need to listen more and talk less. When we're talking to our patients, when we're gathering information, we need to listen more and talk less. That's active listening. And we need to be listening to what's being said and not thinking about how we want to answer. I know y'all are like, oh man, I know that's how most of us are. We're all, especially when I get excited, I want to say, just go, talk. But I don't want to stop and listen to what someone else is saying. I'm talking more and listening less. So we just need to make sure that we're putting that into action with our patients. Now we have silence, which allows time to gather thoughts and answer questions. And then we just talked about it can be uncomfortable for certain people. Clarification allows the listener to get additional information. And you can use statements such as, can you clarify, or do you mean? Summarizing allows the listener to recap and review what was said, using statements such as, if I understand how you feel about this situation, and then you would just summarize. And again, you're going to paraphrase. You're not going to have to use the exact words that were given. Okay, so this is Erikson's 8 stages of psychological development. So in this chapter, we go through a couple of different charts like this. So these are the 8 stages of psychological development. From 0 to 8 months, it's infant, but it's the trust versus mistrust stage. 18 months to 3 years, which is considered toddler. Autonomy versus shame and doubt. 3 to 5, which is preschooler, is initiative versus guilt. 5 to 13, which is grade schooler. Industry versus inferiority. Sorry, I got my R's going there. 13 to 21 years is teenagers. Identify versus role confusion. 21 through 39 years is young adult. Intimacy versus isolation. 40 to 65 is middle-aged adult. Generativity. Can somebody say that? Generavity, sorry, versus stagnation. And 65 years onwards is an older adult. Integrity versus despair. So these are the stages of psychological development. Now let's talk about the 7 stages of grief. So the initial stage is shock. Next, you go into denial, trying to avoid the inevitable. Then there's anger, frustrated outpouring of bolted up emotion. Bargaining, seeking in vain for a way out. Depression, final realization of the inevitable. Testing, seeking realistic solutions. Sorry. Acceptance, finally finding the way forward. So if you've ever been in a situation where you really had to grieve, I believe that some of these are probably going to really hit home for you. All right. So our last little chart is going to be Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So the first part of our pyramid is psychological needs, which would be like sleep, rest, nutrition. The next is going to be safety needs, which is having a place to feel like you belong, a home. The next is love and belonging needs, which is acceptance to peers, relationships. The next is esteem needs. And the last part of this pyramid is self-actualization. Healthcare providers are legally required to provide ways to overcome communication barriers. The Civil Rights Act, all providers who accept federal funds for healthcare provided must ensure equal access to services. The ADA, which is the Americans with Disabilities Act, all healthcare providers must provide free, effective communication to patients, companions with disabilities. And the ADAAA, Americans with Disabilities Act Amendments Act, is expanded definitions of the ADA. So let's talk a little bit about what these things actually mean. So how many times do you see that things are handicap accessible? If you have a patient that is deaf, that can't hear you, and you don't know sign language, what is something you can do to make sure they can communicate with you?
Write it down.
Absolutely, write it down. Can you think of any other situation?
Picture book. Picture.
Absolutely. A picture book. Also, if you have someone who speaks Spanish and you don't speak Spanish, almost always there's someone in the office that can speak Spanish. Usually, if there is a communication barrier that is strictly language, they bring someone with them who does speak English. But you need to make sure that you're still making some eye contact or making sure that the non-English speaking patient feels included in whatever conversation's going on. You know what I mean? Don't just be laser focused on the person who's talking to you, because your patient is there. You're just communicating with a family member. Any questions about any of that? I'd never heard of the Maslow hierarchy before I started doing this curriculum, but it's part of the chapter, so I said I'd just go through it. I don't think I've ever heard of it though. Oh, I'm trying to end the meeting, y'all. That's not what we're doing, right? So we're going to do critical thinking application 2.2. Let's read it together. Christy had heard that people from Hmong and Vietnamese culture do not like others communicating with their children or with their children. They fear the words might be overheard by a spirit who might try to harm the children. Christy mentions this to a coworker. The coworker does not believe in this. Do they need to worry about this belief when working with patients from the Hmong and Vietnamese culture? Let's explain our answer.
It's none of our business what they believe. I mean, it doesn't have to be our belief.
Exactly. But do you have to respect your patients?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Okay. So if you're aware, sometimes we're not aware, right, guys? So we can't really be responsible for what we don't know. But if we do know these things, if it's been made, if the mom says, please do not speak to my children, only speak to me, don't get offended. You have to stop and think. I would never think that that was actually a part of their religion or part of their culture. I may have been offended the first thing, but I want to just remind you, if that happens, then you need to think about what we're talking about right now. We do not know what people's beliefs are. It does not matter what we believe. We respect our patients' beliefs. And if they don't want us to touch their children or say, hey, little Johnny, how you doing? You want a sucker? You can't do it.
Right.
You have to respect them. Everybody's different. You may never encounter someone like that, but if you do, you're going to be able to remember this. Hang on. We talked about diversity and how that could really change how we communicate with our patients. Are you going to communicate with Mr. Jones that's 90 years old and hard of hearing differently than you would say Melanie if she came into the office?
Yes.
Yeah, you have to know your audience, right? Wherever you go, unless it's a pediatrician's office. Well, still at the pediatrician's office, you're going to be dealing with parents and grandparents and step parents and all different kinds. It's going to be such a diverse group of people that you have to learn to communicate with. And I have no doubts that you're going to be able to do that. I just want to give you some food for thought in ways that you can improve upon that. So we always have to be respectful of our patients' beliefs. They don't have to be our own. Respect, not acceptance. I'm not asking you to accept. Okay. All right. So the last thing that we're going to do, and even though we're going to go through this together, I'm going to ask for you guys to upload where you see Zoom for today. Zoom is actually your assignment today. But I'm going to ask you that as we go through this certification preparation little part, it's in your workbook. It may be assigned later on, and you're going to be great because you're going to have already done it, right? After we get done with this video, and after our other ladies and gentlemen watch the Zoom call, I want you to upload number 1 through 10 of your certification preparation. And we're going to actually go through that together and check our answers, okay? So let me share our screen again. Okay, so number 1 says, what is a type of nonverbal communication? Body language, oral communication, email, or letter? Go ahead and just write your answer down. Don't say it out loud. We're going to check it at the end. Number 2, what is a type of verbal communication? Written message, oral communication, email, or all of the above? Hunger, pain, anger, and tiredness are considered which type of barrier to communication? Environmental, internal distractions, external distractions, or hearing impairment? Four, what is a way to overcome environmental distractions? Help make the patient comfortable, use audio recording and large print materials, provide privacy for patients, use pictures and models. Now, you're looking at overcoming environmental distractions. Number 5, what is a maladaptive coping mechanism? Passive aggressive behavior, drug and alcohol use, denial, or all of the above? Number 6, Erikson's theory places a 4-year-old child in which developmental stage? Trust versus mistrust, autonomy versus shame and doubt, initiative versus guilt, industry versus inferiority. Number 7, according to Kubler-Ross, when a person feels sadness, fear, and uncertainty, he is in the which stage of grief? Denial, anger, bargaining, or depression? Number 8, which level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs includes protection from the elements security and stability? Psychological needs, safety needs, love and belongingness needs, or esteem needs? Which level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs includes knowledge, curiosity, understanding, and exploration? Cognitive needs, aesthetic needs, self-actualization needs, and transcendence needs? And our last one is, a person is using which defense mechanism when she reverts to an old, immature behavior to express her feelings? Denial, repression, regression, or displacement? Does anybody need me to go back? No? All right. So here are answers for you to grade. Number 1 is A. Number 2 is D. Number 3 is B. Number 4 is C. Number 5 is D. Number 6 is C. Number 7 is D. Number 8 is B. Number 9 is A. And number 10 is C. Did y'all do pretty well? Which one did you miss, Kelly?
Number 9.
The cognitive?
Yeah.
Yeah, knowledge and things like that is all part of the cognitive. Yeah, I had to stop and really think about that one. What about the you, Miss Elise? Was there one that specifically stumped you?
I think that was number 9 too. I kind of had to think about it.
Yeah. Anybody else have one they want to talk about or go over? No? All right. Well, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about this module. So if you want to continue, if you want to move forward a little bit, we're going to be doing chapters where we're on 2. We're going to go all the way to chapter 7. So we're going to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And it's going to be pretty much the same thing. Read your material, do your workbook. So if you feel like you want to work ahead, I also have on the lesson plan to do chapter 15 and chapter 18. Chapter 15 is the basics of medical insurance. Now, I am going to encourage you, when you have extra time or when you want to do some extra studying, even if your chapter has not been assigned to you, go through and do those certification prep exams in your workbook. Those are things that will help you gain more knowledge in passing your certification exam.